Hello, welcome to Forthrightly News, Fortnightly, with me, G. And what a fucking fortnight. So let's get the boring shit out of the way. Andy Murray proves he's English at heart by losing the Australian Open final in straight sets to eternal rival and ever better Novak Djokovic. The mighty Terriers of Huddersfield Town almost took Arsenal to a replay, though they eventually lost 2-1. Eric Cantona has been appointed coach of the New York Cosmos, a team that doesn't exist and hasn't done so since 1985. Although it did used to include Pelé, it currently doesn't have a stadium or indeed any players. This is the same multi-millionaire ex-footballer who claimed to want a revolution by encouraging people to withdraw all of their money from the banks and therefore create a bank run. Unfortunately, Cantona himself even failed to turn up on the date that he set. NHS reform has been announced, despite no reform being a major Tory manifesto pledge. Poland is all pissed off over last year's plane crash which killed their president and many other upper echelon members of the government. Despite all the evidence to the contrary, they claim a Russian plot. America shit itself last week with full military honours. The world's richest country had a visit from its biggest lender, China, who own nearly almost all of America's serviceable debt. America owes China many trillions of dollars. Major export deals, much fawning from Obama about historic ties and mutual development, were testament to how fucked America is. The UK economy shrank, to the surprise of no one except perhaps George Osborne, who couldn't quite understand how, even though he'd pulled the rug from under public service jobs, public sector spending and education, increased VAT and overseen inflationary policies, somehow the economy still stuttered. When will these economic liberals learn that they are wrong and blockheaded, and that people should no longer allow the Eton Brigade to shit on them from such a great height? Osborne and Cameron are so out of touch, they even got a telling off at Davos for being too market driven. Now, if you get told off for being too in tow to the market by the very people running the markets, then you really need to ask some very serious questions. Moscow was bombed again. Medvedev and Putin moved quickly to further impinge on the freedom of Russian people. Domodedovo airport is the busiest in Russia, yet security was scant. The conspiracy theories are yet to be fully formulated, although in this instance they probably won't be just theories, as there are many questions that should be asked about this event. The security services were next to useless, and it can only be a matter of time before even more restrictive measures are put in place upon the poor Russian people. It has emerged that more US troops died due to suicide than due to combat in Iraq and Afghanistan for the second year running. Not particularly encouraging news from Lebanon. A new Prime Minister has replaced Saad Hariri, the son of assassinated former Prime Minister Rafik Hariri. Supporters of Najib Mikati, including Hezbollah, held victory rallies alongside rival supporters of Hariri in Beirut and Tripoli, although violence was minimal. The new Prime Minister is not expected to support the International Tribunal, which has blamed Hezbollah for the assassination of the former Prime Minister Rafik Hariri. Mikati, the new Prime Minister, was endorsed by enough of the Parliament and the President to be able to take office. The army, always a key player, but often limited in real power terms, has tried to tread a fine line between restoring order and being seen to be siding with Hezbollah. Pro-democracy protests continue to rage across Egypt, surprising all commentators in their size and scope. Despite the threat of arrest, people continue to rally against the president and the government. The police, originally restrained, especially by Egypt's miserable standards, have since proven themselves to be anything but, using APCs to run people over and water cannons to fire at people as they prayed. There is the ever-present risk in these situations of fighting between the police and the security forces and the armed forces, with loyalties likely to be fractured. Over 100 people are so far dead and America is shitting itself for the second time in 2 weeks as the limits of its power crumble everywhere, as Hosni Mubarak is a major benefactor of American aid. Vigilantism has raged and looters take hold of the suburbs. The economy, meanwhile, is absolutely fucked. The role of the army and what side they will join is yet to be fully understood, although it looks as if they are on the side of the people. America cannot stomach a democratic regime in the Middle East because any decent Arabic people, given the choice, would quite rightly invade Israel in an instant. Al Jazeera has been given excellent coverage of these events as they unfold. The Palestinian people were shafted by everybody, including their own leaders and including MI6, who tried to topple Hamas, the democratically elected government. So in an attempt to secure democracy in Palestine, the government of the UK purposefully sided with the losing side, Fatah, and encouraged them to subvert the will of the people, based entirely on a dislike of the winner, Hamas. The Palestinian Authority, that is, the Palestinian government, was effectively a branch of the Israeli security forces and Mossad. For example, the Palestinian Authority knew in advance that a Fatah member was to be assassinated. In negotiations with Israel, they offered to give up claims on Jerusalem and refute the right of return of the Palestinian refugees. They even asked the Israelis for weapons, tear gas, etc., so the weapons of oppression could be used by the new oppressors. They even knew in advance about Israel's illegal war in Gaza in 2009. Now, it should be noticed that Israel is the world's most frequent and blatant breaker of international law, closely followed by the USA. As Israel continues to steer us towards another war, we should all be asking, how long will we continue to allow this angry little nation of bigots to direct our foreign policy? The government fucked up on terror legislation. Its own advisor admits that control orders might be necessary after all. So, the Liberals are doing as expected, and not at all attempting to halt the Tory party on its march back towards feudalism. Toyota again recalls cars. Perhaps new Toyotas will all come with a free tow truck. Yemen and Jordan join the salvation train to democracy with Tunisia and Egypt. Our thoughts go out to the Arab world. Peace be with you. Yeah, man. As I mentioned last week, Goldman Sachs, purveyors of financial doom and evil investors in Facebook, made billions out of the rescue packages that followed on from the financial collapse. I knew that they had made a mint, but this takes the piss. Those taxpayer-robbing bastards that should be burnt as the evil financiers that they are made a cool $16.9 billion as a result of their twat-like practices. If ever a better example of how kowtow to the military-industrial complex the government of the UK is, then the current debacle over Nimrod and the unused aircraft carriers proves it almost beyond doubt. BAE Systems have already received payment for building Nimrod, but now it is being dismantled. BAE got paid £4 billion. Nice work if you can get it. Sorry, nice work if you can use those Eton and Cambridge contracts to good effect. Silvery burlesque only. I mean, Silvio Berlusconi allegedly paid for sex with an underage prostitute. The long list of crimes he faces punishment for once he loses his self-implemented political immunity continues to grow. Staying with Italy, a Ferrari this week went all uber-nationalist as Luca di Montezemolo, their current president, tries to become an Italian nationalist leader. The sexism row rages and was even mentioned by Theresa May in Parliament, as she tried to prove that she does actually have a soul. And finally, how do you sort out Britain's forests? You sell them to the private sector. Okay? Well, I'm sure that'll work out just dandy. Stop selling our country to sheikhs and oligarchs, you bastards. That's all this fortnight from Forthrightly News.